Hello everyone, we have to discuss about that Indian political Western political theory of OP Goa. Part number 7. The debate on the declines of the political theory, which appears in the 1915 and was also the joined in by the some other the prominent and writer and thus the Alfred and the Covens and in his papers and on. In his paper on and the decline of the political theory and published then as the political science and the quarterly in 1953, argued that the political theory and had lost is the significance in the capitalism and as well as the communist systems. The capitalist and the systems and were the inspired and by the ideas of the liberalism and the democracy and whereas there was the no and the political theories. The political science and the quarterly and the 1953 are argued that the political theory and the had lost and it is the significant in the capitalist and as well as the communist system and capitalist system were the inspired and by the idea of the liberalism, libertarians and democracy and whereas there was no the political theory of the democracy and it was also the characterized and by and the overwhelmings and roles of the bureaucracy and the creations and of other hug militaries and machines and political theory and had the practicalities and to play no roles and in the substandings and this the systems and on the other hand and the communist system and then the characteristics and by other new and the forms of the parties and organizations and the rule of either smalls and the oligarchy and the political theory and had taken a the back seat unders and thus the systems and the Kevin pointed out at the Hegels and the Marx and were interested in the small part of the universe and Hegel was the primarily and the concern and with the territorial state and the Marx and with the proletarians and classes as they wanted to the discovers and what was the predictions and within their the respective and the frames of the references and the contemporary politics and was the operatings and on the such other large scale and that it is the could and not be the analysis and in the light of any the partials or the narrow theory and beside the logical positivist and who the shorts and to the concentrated on the fact and to the exclusions and of the valuables and were the also responsible for the declines of the political theories and however the Kevons and comes to the conclusion and that all was not aid the lost and the political science and has to be the answer and questions and which the methodology of the socials and the sciences and may not be the ours and to the answer and it must involve and the criterias of the judgment and which will be the revised and the relevances of the political science and then the Simons and Martin and the Lipset and in his the politicals and the men's and the society and west of the politics. The social basis of the politics 1969 argues and that the value of the contemporary societies and had the already and been the decline. Decided in the United States the age and old the searches and for the good society and had comes to the end the becomes and they had the already achieved it and the privileges and forms of the democracy it that the country and was the closest approximately and to the good and the society itself and the operations and thus the lip sets and to the questions and the continues and the revenues and of the political theory in those days. Indeed, Indeed, the exponent of the behaviorals and the approach and shows to the strength and the sightings, and the scientifics and the basis of the study of the politics and to the dealings, and it is the forms and the political philosophies. Political philosophy. तो दूसरे लोग आई आंसर बार का जरूरत पड़ रही है केबेक का सोशल क्रिटिसिज्म एंड द रिकंस्ट्रक्शंस Political philosophy is the primarily and the concern with the right and the wrongs and good and the evils. Very good. Good and the evil in the social life and when be the found in the sometimes are wrong in the our society and the polity. We looks for the logicals and the grounds and for the criticals and it and the speculated about the creations and of other good societies a the galaxy of the political philosophers like the Pluto, Aristotle and the AT and the Augustines and the Machiavelli, Hobbes and Locke and the Russia. Hegels, Marxville and the mass persons and have the pointed to the prevalence and the ills in the societies and they have the given and there. There are one schemes and of the socials and the reconstructions and we cannot accepted any of them in proposals and as the finals and truth and but they gave us the impulse and the insights and into the possibles and the ill of the social life and there the remedies and we can the draw and about the avance and the schemes of the social reconstructions and on the basis of thus the insights. For example, Pluto and the brilliantly and the exposed and the modules and operandies and of the selfish and the cannings politicians and in other democracies and the Machiavelli. Vividly and the describe and the characters of the selfish and the greedy and pupils and marks the analysis and the sources of conflict and between the owners and the non-owners and of the property and the McPherson's and the pointed into the increases series season of the powers and the structures in the contemporary society which obstructs on the way to the creatives and the freedoms of the individuals and we can draw the valuable insight and from there the shorts thought and for the findings the remedies and to the exciting in the present day society and the clarifications of the concern and the political philosophy and help us lot in the classification of the concept and used in the analysis of the social and the political life. In fact, the clarifications are of the concept and in the each areas of the study and whether the science or the philosophy is essential for the development of knowledge. This task is the particularly and difficult in the field of the political theory. Either seldom as the Bolinson has the pointed and out and there is the widespread and the tendencies and to the utilize and the same words and the notion in the describing non-politicals and the phenomena and that we do in talking about the politicals and matter in the contracts and to the restricted and the technicals and usage of the mechanical mathematics and the naturals and the sciences and fairs and like the authorities and of the fathers the authorities of the church and or the authority of the parliament and are the evidences of the parallels and usage and prevalence in the socials and the politicals discussion and politics and the vision 1960 and so when we use the terms of the commons and parlances in the political politicals and the discourses, and it is the very and the important to determine and there the technicals and the meaning, and moreover the terms and like the authorities and social class and liberty, equality and justice and the democracy and etc., and maybe the applied and by the different school of the thought and to the indicates and the different and the ideas and political philosophy ties trees to the determine there the praises and meanings, and which should be the acceptables and to the folders and of the different and the ideologies and agreement on the meanings of the terms of political discourses, and does not the necessary and means and that they the come to the expected and each other the viewpoints, and but it the certainly and keeps the bay and for there the dialogues, and for example if other literal if the liberals and either socialistic expected the same meanings of the freedoms or the equality, and they are the likely to the appreciated and each other's the viewpoints. As long as the precise and meaning of the terms and of the political discourses and are not and the determinant some the pupils and may the apply and them, and so the clearly and is to the conceals and either weak point and of their the agree arguments, and some the selfish and leaders and the demagogues and may use the thus and the terms and to the mislead and pupils and by the creatings and the emotionals and the appeals and the evadings and reasons and the auto critics and may apply them and to the legitimize and there the appreciates and the resigns, and as the Mussolini's in 1883 1945 and the did in the Italy's and the against are the precise and the widely and accepted the definings of other terms and the enables and each the thinkers to build his the argument and on the sound footing, and as the every and innovations and the mechanics and did need not invent a bill and to the sables and the new and machines, and so every the new thinkers need not the devices and new the technologies to prevent and his the point of view. Encouragement to the mutual respect and the tolerations and the traditions of the political theory, and encourages the dignified and the debates and between the fault and of the different points of view, and most of the politicals and philosophers from the ancient time until the present day and has been the dwellings on the some common problems and giving us and new the insights, and in the Andre the Hackerson has the significantly and the absurd and political theory is other never ending the conversations among the theorists, and whilst the greatest of the debates and are the never the resolve the criticism and which the writers and make of the each others and are the always and most the vivid and the illuminating the politics is after and all the most and the democratics and of the science and the final judgment of the concerns and the politicals and the realities and the good and life, and are the respective responsibilities of all who and the undertakes the study of the theory and the political theory and philosophical ideology and science. Then we the follow the traditional of the political philosophers, and it is the inspire and up to the understand and each other the viewpoints, and it is the gives and us and the opportunity to the identify the strength, weakness over our thought, and to the convinces and other and be the convicted and by the others, and when the truth is the discovered in the short politicals and theory and the generated and the mutuals and respected and the tolerations and amongst us, and prompt us to the resolve and our the differences and the peacefully and conclusions. Broadly speaking, in the political theory consists of the political science and the political philosophy, and thus to the branches of the political theory and taken together and performs three the functions, and which are the recognized as the functions of the political theory. described criticism and the reconstruction on the politicals and science, and mainly the release and on the empiricals and method, and that is the knowledge and based on the hours and the practicals and the experience, and which is the supposed to be the most reliable. Hence is the specialized and the descriptions and the political philosophies, and being the concern and with the value judgment specialized in the criticism and the reconstructions, and advocated of the positive positivism and the new and the positivism and the logical positivism and the behavioralism, and wish to the confine and the political theory into the spheres. Two spheres and of the political science, and they the argues and there the evaluatives and the statement and are based on the individuals and or the group preferences, and which differs and from the individuals and to the individuals and the groups and to the groups, and there is no the reliable and method of the determining what is the right or the wrong and good or the bad, and one cannot and the significantly and discover the purpose of the universe and or the human's life. Hence, the question of the value judgment and should be the dropped and from the purviews and of the political theory and the altogether. And however, the since the advanced and the post behavioralism in 1969. As consequent and upon the revivals and of the political philosophy in the 1970 and 1918, and there has been other renewed and the emphasis and on the value and the realism of the political theory. It is now and the argued and there the values and judgment servant as and the essential and guide into the social policy, and the indifferent and to the value judgment and will the live and the society in the dark. The emerging and concern with the environmentalism and the feminist and human the right and the social justice, and for the subaltern and the groups etc., and call for the explorings and the new horizons of the value judgment if the politicals and the theories and tends to the relinquish and this the important functions. The emerging and the concern with the environmentalism and the feminism and human rights and the social justice, and for the subaltern and the groups etc., and for call for the explorings and the new horizons and of the value judgment. Of value judgment if the political theories of the tends and to the relinquish, and this the important function. It is maybe the graved and by the sums and less and the competent agency is the David Holt and the political theory today 1991. Editor's introduction has the pointed and out the taken as the whole and the task of the political theory are the unquestionability and the demanding, and in the absence of theirs the systematically and pursued, and there is the always the dangers and there the politics and will be the left and to the ignorance and self-interested or to the those and the simple and with other will to power. Thus all the functions of the politicals and theory and have now the becomes and very the important and the urgent in the present day and world whereas and most of the our problems and are the assuring global dimensions, and they are the being and recognizing as the problems of the humanities as such. Debate on the decline of the political theory. Political theory implies and the intellectual efforts and to the attain either systematically knowledge and about the goals and the method of the politics, and in this the sense and it has other long tradition and speedings the overs and two and the half millenniums and the however and in the mid and the 20th century. The exponent of the new political science and began to the question and the continues and the revenue. Relevances of the traditional the political theory and David Easton's and the American and the political scientist, and in his the political system and the inquiries and into the state of the political science in 1953 and asserted and that the traditional political theory and was based on the mere and speculations, and it was the debates of the acute observations of the political reality in order to the lie and the scientific fundamental foundations and of the study of the politics, and it was the necessary and to the rescues, and it is from the study of the classics and the history of the politics ideas and eastern the argues and that the traditional politics theory and was the product of the turmoil and that the characteristics and the past ages, and it the particularly and the flourish in the Greece in the Pluto's and days, and Italy in the 15th century, and England in the 16th and the 17th century, or the France in the 18th century, and which were the days of the widespread and social and the political and the upheavals, and it had no the relevances and in the contemporary society. Easton also the pointed out that there has been no outstandings and the political philosophers and after the Marx and the 1883 and the J.S. Mill and the 1806 and 1873 and Y. Leave and the Callis and on other centuries and old idea than Easton the argues and that the while economic and the socialist and had the produced and the systematics and the study of the human behavior in their the perspective and fairness of the investigations and political scientists and had the lagged behind, and they the fell into the acutes and the institute tables and research and tools to account and for the rise of the fascism and or the communism, and there the communism and the continues in against the during the Second World War 1939 and 1945, an economist and the sociologist and the philosophicals and had the played and the active role and in the decisions making in process and but the political science and where the ignored and the easterns and the therefore and appear and for the building up the behaviorals and the political science are closest to the others and socials and the sciences and to take its the due and the places and the decisions making and process, and he the suggested and there the violent traditionals and political theory and was the primarily concerned and with the involving and the suitable value and for the society and modern politicals and science and need not and make effort and in this the directions, and he believed and that the value and represented individuals or the groups and preferences and relatives and to the social and the condition in which thus the are the developed and contemporary society and would involve it is once the value and systems and from its the our experience and the insights and the political science and should only the focus on the building causals and the theory to the explain political behavior. Causal theory and the theory and that the explanation the relations and between the causes and the effect, and in others the word and it the inquiries and into and the causes of the what happened and the anticipated and what will and happen if the certain causes is the present, and how however the easterns and the changes and his the views and after the one and a the half and decades and in his the presidentials and address and to the American politicals and science and associated and in the 1969 and he the launch and his the post and behavior and revolutions, and in the fact and eastern was the trying to the converts and political science and from other pure and science to the applied the science, and he the instead in instituted and that scientific investigation and should enable and the contemporary society and to the tide and over the prevailing and the crisis, and this also the involve the renewals and concern and with the values which were shown to be the excluded in the earlier and behavior approach, and the debate and on the declines and of the political theory in which appears in the 1950 was also joined and by the some others the prominent and writer, and thus the Alfred and the Cobbins in his the papers and on the declines of the political theory and published and in the political science and the quarterlies and the 1953 and argued that the political theories and had lost it is the significance in the capitalist as well as the communist system and capitalist system system and were the inspired by the idea of the liberalism and the democracy, and whereas there was no the politicals and theory of the democracy, and it was also the characterized in base and the overwhelming and role of the bureaucracy and the creations and of the hug military and the military machine. Political theory had the party practically and to the no roles in the sustaining and this the system, and on the others hand and the communist system and were the characterized and by other new forms of the parties and the organized and the rule of the smalls and the obligates and the political theory, and had taken other big sheets and under thus the systems, and Cowen pointed and out there the Hegels and the Marx were the interested in the small parts of the universe, and Hegel was the primarily and concerned and with the territorials and the state, and Marx and with the proletariat and class, and they wanted to the discovers and what was the predestinate, and within theirs the respectives and the frames and of the references, and contemporary politics was the operatings and on the such a the large scale, and that it could not be the analysis and in the light of the any and the particles and or the narrow theory, and besides the logicals and the positivist and who the shorts and to the concentrate on the fact and to the exclusions of the values, and were also the responsible and for the declines of the political theory, and however the came to the conclusions and that all was not it the lost and the political science, and has to the answer and questions, and which the methodologies and of the social sciences and may not be the ours to the answers, and it must the evolve criteria of the judgment, and which will the revised and the relevant of the political science, and then the Seymour and the Martins and the Lipset and in his the political man the social basis of the politics and the 1916 in the argued that the value of the contemporary and the society and had the already been the decided in the United States. The age old and the search and for the good society and had comes to the end and because and they had the already and achieved it. The prevalence and forms of the democracy in that the countries and was the closest and approximations and to the good society and itself in the operations. Thus the lip said and to the questions and the continues and relevant of the political theory in those the days. Indeed, and the exponent of the behavioral approaches showed to the strengths. So, and the scientifics and the basis of the study of the politics and to the dealing it from political philosophies and but he the compositions of the political philosophies and never the approvals and there the stand Leo the Stratus and in his the famous papers and what is the political philosophy and published in the journals of the political 1957 and in and the epilogues and to the age on the scientifics and the study of the politics and edited and by the Harberts and the J. Storings in 1962, argued and that the new science and of the politics and was in the fact the symptoms and of the allegations and declines of the political theory and by adopting the positivist and approach and it had the ignored and the challenges of the normatives and issues and the empiricals and the theory of the politics and assert and equal importance of all the socials and the values and it is the denial that the certain things are intrinsically and high the whiles and others are the intrinsically and low and thus it is the obliterates and the distinctions and the between the man and the brutes and as if it's the destroy and the identity and of the clean waters and by the mixing it and with the dirty waters and the positivism and the view and that the release on the scientific method as the only and the sources of the true and knowledge and it is the rejected and superstitions and religions and the metaphysics and as the prey and the scientific forms of the thought and it held and that the all knowledge that the all knowledge is the ultimately and the based on the sense and the experience and has the empiricals and method must be the adaptant for any the genius and the inquiry in the field of the social sciences as well as the physical sciences and the common commenting and on this the debates and Dante and the Germinos and in his the beyonds and the ideology and the revivals of the political theory in 1967 and argues and that in the most of the 19th century and early the 20th and the century and there were two the major sources of the declines of the political theory and the rise of the positivist and which led to the craze and for the science and the prevalence of the political ideology and the culminating and in the Marxist and but now it was the against and in the ascendantism of the particularly in the political thought of the Michals and the Oxfords and the Hannah Arendts and the Bertrand Day of the Jovelans and the Leo Strauss and the Erics and the Boygalians and this the list was the expanded by the Germinos and in other subsequent and paper in the 1975 and so as to the include and the John Rawls and the CB and the Miss Parsons and the Christians and the Bay and the Robert Nozick and the Herbert and the Marcuse and the Jurgens and the Habermas and the Elas Diers and Millastars and the Michaels and the Helvers. The works of thus the writers had the revival and the grand traditions and of the political philosophy. Germinos the suggested and that in the orders to the understand and the new role of the political theory and it was the imperatives to the identify and it with the politicals and philosophy and political philosophy is other critical study of the principles and of the right orders in the human social and the existences and involving the inquiry and into the rights and the wrong and it is the neithers and the reductionist and the behavioral and the socials and where the everything and is the reducted to sense experience and nor the opposite an ideology which accepted the some principles and to be the true and the without the inquiry and into where there the validity it is the comprehensive and both the knowledge of the fact and the insights and with which and that knowledge is the comprehended and according to the Germinos and the political philosophy and deal with the perennials and the problems and confrontings and man in his the socials and the existence and the detachment and is not the ethicals and the naturalities is the political philosophers and cannot the remain and the indifferent and to the political struggles and of his the times and as other behavioralism and Wood claims in the short behaviorals and political science and the concentrates and on the fact and the remains and neutrals and to the values. Political philosophy cannot the grow along with the positivism and which the obstain and the from the criticals and the examinations and of any the socials and the situation social the situations and the gulf and the between the traditionalism and the behavioralism and the component of the political theory is so the wide and that they cannot be the reneated and any the theory and separated from the perennials and concern of the political theory and will proved to be the irrelevant. Germino lamented that the behaviorals and the political theory has the often and the implicities or the uncritically and the endorsed and the politics and the practices and of the established order instead of performing the performing the Socratic and the functions of the speaking truth and to the powers and he the warms and that the full recovery of the criticals and the politics theory and cannot be the achievement within the positivist and the universe of the discourses and the Herberts and the Marcuse 1898 and the 1979 and has the significantly and pointed to the risk and the involved in the demand and for the scientific study of the society and the politics and he has the argued and that when the language of the social science and attempt to the conforms to the language of the natural and sciences and it tended into the land supports and to the status and the cues in this the contact and the scientifics and the terminologies and is so to be the defined and in the terms of the such and the operation and the behaviors and that are the capables of the observations. and measurement, and this leaves know the scopes and four other. This leaves no scopes and four other criticals and the visions and in the scientific language and for the incident when the pupil participations and is the sword and to be the estimated and on the basic of the numbers and of the voters and who the turn up aid the elections and we do not questions whether and the prevalence and the electorals and the system and conforms to the spirit and of the democracies and when we the adapt and this the method of the study and social the science and no longer the day remains and the instrument of the social and the inequalities and it is the becomes and the instrument of the social control in any the cases and since the 1917 and the disputes and between the political and science and the political philosophy and has largely the subsided and while the David Easton's and had the sons and either renewals concern and with the values in his the post behaviorals and the approach and the exponented and of the political philosophy and did not the hesitate in the testing and there the assumptions and why the empiricals and method and the Karl Popper's and 1902 and 1994 and the eminent and the exponents of the scientific method and the proceeded and to the draw and conclusions and the regardings and socials the values and John Draw 1921 से लेकर 2002 and adopted and the empiricals and the method and for the Arabians and it is the principle of the justice and then the CV and the make Phersons and 1911 and 1987 and attack the empiricals and the theories of the democracy and the propounded and by the Joseph the Schumpeter's and the 1883 and 1950 and the Robert Dehal and 1915 and the advance is the avance and radicals theory of the democracy and the Herbert and Marcuse and the Jurgens and the Habermas in 1929 and have shown the strong and the empiricals and the insights and in theirs the criticals and the analysis of the contemporary and the capitalism and it is now and hold that the political science and like the others and the socials and the naturals and sciences and enables use to the strengthened and our the means and but and we will have to the resource and to the politicals and the philosophies and to the determine and our the end and means and the ends are the interdependent and hence the political science and the political philosophy and play the contemporary role in the our social life. Chapter number 2 concept of the ideology. In the realm and of the political theory and the terms of the ideology is applied into to the context either set of the ideas and which are the accepted and to be the true and by other particulars and groups and parties and or the nations. In the realm of the political theory, the terms and the ideology is the applied into the context and either set of the ideas and which are the accepted and to be the truth and by other particulars and the group and party or the nations and without the further examinations and the science of the ideas and which examine and as to be the how and the different ideas are the form and how the true is the distorted and the how we can overcomes and the distortions and to the discovers and true the knowledge. थोड़ी मोबाइल की आवाज़ कम कर लिए ज़रा. Ideology as a the set of the ideas In this context, and the ideology means are the set of those ideas and which are the accepted and to be the true and by other particulars and group and without the further examinations. Thus, ideas are the innovated in the orders and to the justify or the denounce and the particulars and way of the social and the economically or the politically and organization. In this, the sense and ideology is the matters of the faith and it has no the scientific and the basis and the adherences and of and the ideology and think and that it is the validities need not be the subjected and to the verifications and different the groups and may the adhere and to the different ideologies and hence the different amongst and them are the inevitables and the ideology and therefore the gives and rise to the love. Ideologies are the liberalism and the capitalism and the socialism and the Marxist and the communism and the anarchism and the fascism and the imperialism and the nationalism and the internationalism, etc. Ideology, politics and the political theory, a group and build the invoke and it is the ideology and to the determine and the best forms of the government and the basis of the right and to the rule and the procedures and of the selection of the rulers and broadly the speakings and it is the answer and the following questions and who should rules and how rulers and should be the selected and according to what and the principles and should the government and operated and what are the institutions and should be the mentioned and or the replaced and for the realizations of those the principle and when and the ideology is used and to the defined in the excitings and systems and or to the advocated and either limited or either radical changes in there the system it is the becomes either part of the politics and either political ideology and may lend and the legitimacy and to the ruling class and or it the may and the involve and the urge and for the revolutions it revolution it's and therefore the signifies the manipulatives and the power of the dominated class or of either socials and the movements and the ideology is the and the ideologies is the actions and oriented it is the presented are the cues and before it is the adherences and the endures and them to the fight and for that the cues and to make the sacrifices and for its the realizations and for the example nationalism and may the empires inspires people to the sacrifice and their the wealth or the life for the defendings and the freedoms of their the nations and but the communalism and may the includes hatred among the peoples and towards the member of the another community and the prompt and them to the destroy life and the property of the innocents and person and one the stream of the fundamentalism and based on the obscurantism and has the giving rise into the worldwide terrorism and the obscurantism a policy or the tendency in involving the deliberates and efforts and it the making and things the obscures and so as and to the prevented and people and from the knowledging the truth and in the fear the fears and of the political in the spheres and of the political conflicting and ideologies and maybe the involved and to the identity and in defendants and the conflictings and the norms or the ideas of the those and some ideas and maybe the designed and to the subs and some the bases and the interested in the some ideas and may the shifts and to the challenges irrationals and believe and the conventionals and thus and paves the ways and for the progress for example ideology or the imperialism and maybe the invoked and to the facilitated and the बिल्कुल मेरी नज़र शो करवा वो नीचे आ explorations of the colonials and the territories and this the peoples and while the environmentalism and maybe the invoked to save the humanities and from the curse of the atmospherics and the pollutions and the depletings and of the valuables and the naturals and resources and coming to the political theory and it may be the observant that in the many and cases and political theory and the political ideology are the described and by the same terminologies and for the instance and the term and the liberalism and the socialism and the communism and etc are applied into the describe and certain the political ideology and as well as the political theory and do they the indicated and the identicals and things and some the writers and things and it is so and it the times and the political theory and seems to the justify and the prescribes the courses and of the action, and as if it were other political ideology, the genesis and of other politicals and theory and may be the shorts and to be the explained and in the light of the stresses and the strain and the emanating and from the actual politics and sometimes and clays of the some political theories and may be the explained and in the light of the clays and in other political situations, and that is the Y and G as 7 in his the preface and to the first and the edition of his the history of the political theory in 1937 wrote. This history of the political theory is written in the light and of the hypothesis and that the theories and of the politicals are the themselves in the part of the politics and the reflections and upon the end of the politicals and actions and upon the means of the achievings and them the upon the possibilities and the necessities of the politicals and situations and upon the obligations and that the political purposes impose and is and the intrinsic and the elements of the whole politicals and process. However, the Shavine and view on this the issues and could cannot be the expected as the finals and words and we the must and draw other distinctions and the between the origins and the validities of the theory while it may be the conceded and that the politicals and theories and arise from and the different and political situations and aid the study of the political theory and also the included the criticals and the evaluations and of the thus theories the criticals evaluation and involve the segregations and of the truth and the embodies and in thus the theories and from those the element and which are the product of the political consideration, and for example we denounce and the astroted and different defenses of the slaveries and the subjugations and of the women's because and they were the designed into the promotes and the interested and of the freemen in the ancient Greek society, but his the explanations of the instabilities and of the constitution and stirrings and that the powers and on the virtues and cannot the coexist and must be the expected as valid as it's the embodies and the externals and the truth, and similarly and the Machiavellian advice and to the prince and to set and the aside and all the morals and the consideration cannot be the expected and but his the insight regarding the human behavior. It may be the conceded and that the political theory and arise and from the different and political situation and aid the study and of the political theory also include the criticals and the evolutions of the thus theories, and this the critical evolution and the involves and the segregations and of the truth and the embodies and in thus the theories and from the those and the elements and which are the product of the political considerations, and for example and be the denounce and the Aristotle's and the defense and of the slaveries and the subjugations of the women because then they were the design and to the promotes the interested and of the freemen in the ancient Greek the society, and but his the explanations of the instabilities and of the constitution and the statings and there the power and the virtues and cannot the coexist and the must be the expected as the valid and as it is the embodies and the internal and truth the similarly and the Machiavelli's and advice to the princes to set aside and all the morals and the considerations and cannot be the expected and but his the insights and regarding the human behavior can be the profitably and used in the spheres of the diplomacies and the statecraft. It is the criticals and functions. It is the critical functions of the political theory and that the distinct used and it forms the set of the ideas and which are the product of the politics and the involve the pursuits and of the partitions and the politicals and the ideology is the closely and related to the politics and because it is the involved and the pensionations and puzzle and search for other better societies and the according to the prescribes and models the but and the political theory and involve either disinterested and search for other betters and the society it is the goal and are under the constantly and the investigations and the critical examination and entry and the hackers in his the political theories and philosophies and ideology and science in 1961 has observed that the weathers and we look at the philosophical and the side of the political theories or it's the scientific side and it is the always and the dispassionated and the disinterested and in others the words and the theorist and has no the fascinations and of for other particulars and the politicals and the arrangement. He's the image of other. He's the image of other good life and is not the affected and by any the prejudices and he does not and favors and or the oppose any the particulars and the arrangement without the examining it is the rightness and on the contrary and the ideology is the designed into the defense and defense the exciting systems and all to the condemns and it in the orders and to the provide prove the superiority and offer the different system. If the theories and the loaded and by and the ideology, it is the bounded and to be the distorted and the political philosophy and or the political theory and calls for other disinterested and search for the best forms of the state and the society. Ideology and seeks to the justified and the exciting or other futures and the political and the social arrangement and political science and calls for the imperative observation of the political and the social realities and the ideology and focused on the selected and parts of the political and the social realities and gives its the distorted and descriptions and as well as the explanations on the contrary and the absolutes impartiality. अरे यार liberalization basic trend of the liberalization is the principle of the politics and which the insist on the liberty of the individuals and as the first and the foremost of the goal of the public and the policies and liberty in this the sense and the implies and the liberalizations from the restraint and the particulars lease and the from the restrained and imposed and by and the authoritarians and state. This the principle and was the evolved and in the past and in last the 17th and the centuries in orders to the coordinated and the feudals and privileges of the land and the ownings and class and to the create the favorables and the condition for the new entrepreneurs and the class and to the enables and them to the contribute and to the social progress. Authoritarians and state and bears and the individuals a group and the institutions and or either set of the rules and the insurance and in either secrets and book are the regarded and as the sources of the authorities and the legitimated and powers it is the orders or the directions and are the required and to be the obeyed and by all the without and the questionings and in fact the liberalism and is not the fixed and mode of the thought and but and the intellectuals and the movement and which seeks and to the accounted and knew the ideas and in orders to the face and knew the situation and the new challenges and however and it is the basic contained and may be the identified as follow and man is other rational creation he has the immense on the potential and to the continued and to the socials programs and as well as to his the good one goods and there is no the basic and the contradictions and between and the individuals and self the interested and the common and the interested in fact the common interested and the denotes are the point of the reconciliations and between the interested of the between of the different and the individuals man is the endowed and with the certain naturals and the right and which the cannot be the transgendered and by the any authorities civil society the state are the artificial and the institution and created by the individual to the subs and the common interested. They are the entitled and to the damage demands and the obedience to their the orders and from the individuals and on the conditions and of the fulfillings and this the functions. Liberalism and the belief in the primacy of the procedures and overs the end and the product, and it means and if the procedures and for the arrivings and in a the decisions is right and the decisions and may be the accepted and to be the right and the liberal views and of the freedoms and the qualities and the justice. Justice and the democracies and is other search and for the right and the procedures and in the different spheres and of the social life and the liberalism and the promotes and civil the liberties and of the individuals and the including the freedoms of the thought and the expressions and the freedoms of the associations and the movement and personals and freedom and which rules and out the search and or the arrest and without the warrant and the strict and complies and with the legal and the judicials and the procedures and any the restrictions on the individuals and freedom and should be the maintained to the ensure equal freedom for the others and liberalism and uphold freedom of the contract and know the individuals and can the accepted and any the obligations without his avance and the contact. Freedom of contacts and the no individuals and can the expected and any the obligations and without his the avance and the consent. Contract and however the contract and the included under the procedures and or the one and which the compromises and the dignities and of the individuals and shall be the violated and the liberalism and said that the politics and policies and should be the product and of the free bargainings and between the group of the individuals formed to purpose their the common interested. In short, liberalism and the treats and market and society as the models. Yes, the model of the social organization and where's the role of the state and this would be should be the confidential and to the protections and of the individuals and life and the property and the enforcement of the contracted and the maintenances of the minimum and the common services and which would not and be the undertakens and by the privates and by the private entrepreneurships and the liberals and views and the state and is other necessary and able the liberalism and the treat and the state as the mean and the individuals and as the ends and its rules and ours the absolute and the authority of the state. Early exponented and of the liberalism and include the John Locke and the 1632 and 1704 and the Adam Smith and the 1723 से लेकर के 17 every expenses of the liberalism include the John Locke and the 1632 से लेकर 1704 and the Adam Smith 1723 से लेकर के 19 and the Jeremy Bentham and the 1748 से लेकर के 1832 all of them and where the English philosophers and Locke is known as the fathers of the liberalisation and the Smith is known as the father of the economics and Bentham and the founders and of the utilitarianism and all of them and the differentiated and the principles of the laissez and fairs and which implies and leads to the interferences and of the states and in the economics and the activities of the individuals. They are the founders and of the classicals and the liberalism and where is which is the cold and the negative liberals and the because it is the contemporary. Contemplated negative and role of the role of the state and in the spheres and of the mutuals and the retractions and of the individuals, and in this the in the 20th and the century and Harvard and the Spencers 1820 and 1903 and the English and the philosophers showed to the reforms and the negative and the liberalizations. Welfare state, a state and that the provided and for the various types of the state and the service social services and for its the citizens, IG and the social security and the financial assistance, and in the case of the loss of the job and or the any other the sources of the income and death of the breed and by winners, prolonged and the illness or the physical and the disabilities and or any the others and the calamities, and free education and public the health and poor the reliefs and supply of the existence. काय रे supply of the essentials and the goods and the services and like and the goods and the grains and milk and the fuels and transport and to the needs and it the subsidies and rates, and it is the undertakings and the protections and of the circulars and heritage including the momentums and the museums and John Short Mill and the 1806 से लेकर 1873 and the English and the philosophers and the short to the modified and the utilitarianism and the principle of the laissez and faire on the physical and goods has. The theory of the welfare and this the tradition and was the purpose and developed by the LT and the house LT and the hub house and the 1864 से लेकर के 1929 and Harold and the J Laxi and the 1893 से लेकर के 1950 and the RS the Tone and the 1880 से लेकर के 1962. All of them were and the English and philosophers and thus the theories. Thus the theories and the practice and of the welfare and state flourished and in the state half of the 20th century in England. And this the theory and the contemporary positive and role of the states and in the securities and either design dignified and life and to the distinguished, and it is the therefore and called the positive liberalizations. On politicals and the side and liberalizing and the promotes and the democracy, and on the economically and sides and it is the promotes and the capitalism and the democracy is the concern and with the fulfilled and needs and the aspirations. And democracy side and it is the promotes and ordinary capitalism and democracy is the concern and with the fulfill and need and the expected and of the democracy of the ordinary peoples, and but the capitalism and resulted in the concentrations and of the economic power in the hold of the few and the who may and use. An introduction to the political theory and the esteem of the liberals and the thought. Early liberal and the theory and developed in the two main and direction and the individuals and the utilitarianism and the individuals focus on the individuals. independence existences and the judgment and should be the givings and full and the recognitions and while and the makings and public policy and the decisions it mean and know the individuals also be the it is required and the recognition while making the public policies and the decision and it means and know the individuals and shall be the made to the suffers in orders to the benefits and larger unit of the society according to the view and only and the individuals can have the any rights and the families trade union corporation or the states and cannot have any the rights and which could be the distinguished and from the rights and of theirs the individuals and member the similarly and know the socials and the units can have any the interested and which could be the distinguished and from the interested and of the its and the individuals and member the individuals member individuals. On the other hand and the utilitarian and stand for the greatest and the happiness of the greatest happiness is defined as the balance of the pleasures and over the plane and derived and from the various and goods and services and act and the policies and founders and of this the schools of the thought and the journey and the Bentham. From journey and the Bentham and observance that the natures and has placed and the mankind under to the sovereign master and the pleasure and pain and human the behavior is the guided and by and the argues RJ to obtain the pleasure and the avoid pain and the moral principles and the state policy and should aims and aid the promotings greatest happiness of the greatest and the numbers and Benthams and made know the distinctions between the quantities and of the different pleasures. He insisted on the maximizing and the quantity of the pleasures and but the John starts and the mill and appointed in the pointed and to the quality relatives and the different and between the different types of the pleasures and thus and the recognition the varieties of the tastes and of the different individuals and furthers and he the rejected he projected and the liberty of the individuals and as the highest and value thus the modifications in the utilitarianism and tilted it is the towards and individuals and the transformation it is basic the character and mill also the pleaded and for the taxation of rich and for the benefits of the poor and thus the papes and the way for the welfares states. Neoliberalism and the neoclassical and the liberalism or the liberalisms and stand for the contemporary and version of the classifications and the liberalism and basics to the restore and the laser fairs and the individualism and it is the denounces and the welfares. The chief exponent and of the new and the liberalism including the FA and the Hayek in 1899 and 1992 and the Australians and the thinkers and the Milton and the Friedman and 1990 1919 and 12 and the 2006 and the Americans and the economist and the Roberts and the Nozick and 1938 से लेकर 2002 and the American and the philosopher in the second half of the 20th century and thus the thinkers and released and that the theory of the welfare state was the inimical and to the individuals and liberty as it's the involved and the forced. for transfer of the resources and from the more and the componented and to the less and the component in orders to the restore and the individuals and the liberty, and they show to the revives the principle of the laissage and the fairs, and not only into the economic and the spheres, and but also in the socials and the political sphere in other nutshells, and neoliberalism and the afford and full the autonomies and the freedoms of the individuals, and it is the sixth is the liberations and from the all instrument and which the tend and to the restrict and his the visions of the world, and the including the institutions of the religions and families and the customs of the social and the conformities apart and from the political institutions and philosophically, and it is the impure deeds and the deterministics and the outlooks and of the human lives, and the maintained that the human personalities and the character and thought and action and cannot be the constrained and as the outcomes and of his the circumstances in others the words, and it is the traits men as the makers of his the destinies, and in it is therefore the hostiles and to all the socials and the legal restrictions and on the individuals and freedom of the action and in the political spheres, and knew the liberals and the parties particularly and the incident that men and the economic and the activities and must be the activities and the liberated and from all the restrictions and to the enables and him to the achieve and through the programs and the prosperities, and all neoliberals and believe in the primarily and of the spontaneous and orders of the human relationships, and the exemplified in the free and market, and they the deplores any the politics and notably and the socialism and which the pretend to have and the defines definitives. Human needs the manifested themselves and through the merits and the unpredictables and the transactions and the between the individuals and livings in either free or the open and society. If the government and ties to the regulates and thus the activities, and it would the amount and to the curtailings and there's the freedoms and without the full feelings and there the genius and needs, and it would be the therefore and be the advisables and to the transparent such the decisions and to the market, and which will the maximizing and there the choice in the economic and the spheres and market and the exemplified and the genuine and the democracies, and in the politicals and spheres the market and the represents market implies and the genius democracy, and in the politicals and spheres and market represents and either models of the genius democracy, and where the votes and are the tended again welfare and benefits, and the cost is the one and by the most and the productives and members of society in critical appraisals. Liberalism is no the doubt either dynamics and the political philosophy, and which has the responded and to the changing needs of the times, and however the like any the others ideology it has failed and to the redeems and mankind and from its the predicament and in the fact and liberalism and has the clung to capitalism and so the firmly, and that all its new ventures and appears and to be the new and the devices for the sustaining and the capitalist and system or the justifying and it is the existence. Liberalism and the retails it is the bourgeois and the character. Liberalism across and for the protections and of the interests of the bourgeois and the capitalism and class, and when the political powers and limiting the power of the state in the favor of the laissez and faires and individuals and minimums and the government and minimums regulation in the pleadings, and policy and liberalism and the instead so much and on the freedoms of the properties and the owings and class and that it and said and the asides and all the humans and considerations and as the r as the tane and in his the acquisitions and society in 1920 observe. The story of the struggles and between the humanitarianism and the sentimented and theories of the properties and the transmitted and from the elites and the centuries is the familiars and no one has the forgotten and the oppositions and offered in the name of the rights and of the property and to the factories and legislations to the housing and reforms and to the interference and with the alterations and of the goods and even to the compulsory and the sanitations of the private houses. In other later phase and the starting and from the French Revolution 1789 and when the Bourgeois themselves and came to the power liberalization tenors to the widens and the functions and of the state and to the support and the even and larger and the degrees of the regulation and it is cannot be the denied and that the concept of the welfare state and was the involved and not out of the sympathies and for the vulnerables and the sections of the society and the peasant and workers and the ordinaries peoples and but with other view to the enlistings and the supports of those and the classes and in order to maintain the status and quo and thus in the practice and the liberalism and uphold a capitalist system or the mixed and economic in which also the creates and the favorables and the conditions for the bourgeoisie and to the maintain and there the hold and on the economically as well as the political power and the policy of the incrementals and changes and which the implies and smells and the continues and the concessions and to the lowers and classes is the clearly and the derived devised and to the contain answer and contemporary liberalism and afford the representative democracy on the assumptions and that the state and the representation the interested and of all the groups and within the society and that it is the ensures and the reconciliations of the conflictings and interested and this could be the truth and in the case of the some and the society and but it cannot be the demonstrated and as other universal and the phenomenon in the developing and nations it is the particularly and the evident and that the various groups and are not the equally conscious and of theirs the interested and nor are they the equalities and the well organized and nor the equalities and the vocals and usually and thus the countries and are the dominated and by the wastage and the interested and for the instant and in India's either harmful and of the business and the interested and are the very well organized and the active and the vocals while the tendencies and the large bodies of the consumers and is not and the adequacy and the organized and thus in the spite of the decisions and beings the taken by the representatives and institution in the practice and there is and the obvious and the imbalance and in the spheres and of the protection and of the interested of the various groups and contributions of the liberalism. The greatest and the merit of the liberalism and lies in the initiative and the process of the replacing and the traditionalism and by the modern and the rationalism and in orders. In others, the words and it is the asserted and that the socio-economics and relation of the man is then the society and which were the hitherto and based on the traditions and should now be the based on the reasons and since this the process and was the started and by the new and the middle class and the merchant and the industrialist and they were the first to benefit from this change and the federalism and was the replaced by the capitalism, and not only in the economic and spheres and but the correspondings and changes and were brought about and in the political spheres and as well, and this had some the evils and efforts effect and also the conditions and of the working classes and the deteriorated and with the succession of the classical and the liberalism and but the ones and the process of the defining redefinings and the social and the relations and from the point of views and of the reasons had the started, and it is the could not be the stopped and from the readings, and it is the logicals and the conclusions. The rise of the socialism and showed either better deals and for the workings and class on the same principles of the reasons, and which was the initially and the invoked and by the liberalism and faith in the reasons and is other dynamics and force and the liberalism, and therefore did not the hesitate to transform itself and as and when it was the faced and with the new and the changes, and this has led to the new and the insights and as the regard and the principles of the freedom and the inequalities and justice and democracy and progress and others the human's value. In fact, the liberalism and is the invoked and today into the importance and the context and as other theory of the capitalism and the as other theories of the constitutionalism, and so long as the liberalism and is the commended and with other view of the vindicatings and the economic and the relations and of the capitalist and the society, and it is the bound and to suffer and from its the inners and contradictions and which the must and be the resolve and by the invokings and human the values and on the other hand, and when the liberalism and is the invoked and as the foundations of the constitutionalism and the situation comes on the politicals power, and it is the embodies and the lasting politicals and values, and it is therefore and bound and to the survive and on this the funds constitutionalism the principle and that the institute on the organization and the working of the student according to the constitution, and so that and know the organ or the office and holders and of the state is the allowed and to use the arbitrary and powers and the constitution, and not only the provided and for the frameworks of the government and but also the prescribes and power of the various organs of the government, and the limits of those the powers. What is the Marxism? What is the Marxism? Marxism and derived, and it is the name and from that of the Karl Marx and the 1818 and 1883 and the famous German economist and the social philosophers of the 19th century, and who is the chief and the exponents. Chief exponents. It is interesting and to the recall and that this the terms and was unknown in the Marx and even the lifetimes and the Friedrich and Engels and 1820 and 1895 and the close friend the collaborators of the Marx, and once the reported and the followings the comments and made by the Marx and the himself all one now, and is that and I am not other Marxist and the Marx and probably and said so yes he did not the claim and to the affairs offers other comprehensively world and views, and it is also the possibles and that he did not and the advance and such the claims and out of the modesty, and however the towards and the end of the 19th century and G.V. प्लेखनोव 1856 से लेकर के 1918 रशियन मार्क्सिस्ट and announced that the Marxism and is other whole world and views however the despise and this the names and Marxism should not be the regarded and is other system of the through and the exclusively and belonging to the Marx, and Marxism in fact comprises other rich traditions of the social and the some social thought is the living traditions and with the immense and possibilities. Marxist in its the purpose and the sense and first the appearances and in the middle of the 19th century in the response and to the approaches and conditions and created by the capitalist and systems, and it will be the recalled and that the liberalism and across and in the 17th century as other philosophy and of the human freedoms, and but by the middle and of the 19th century and it had the becomes and clears and that the classicals and the forms of the liberalism and that it is the the doctrines of the lapses and fires and free the market and economic and had the faced and to the create the conditions of human freedom and liberalism and had the achieved and the goal of the stabilizing capitalism and under the and which is the teeny class of the capitalism and enjoy and the specials and power and the privileges and aid the expansion of the large majorities and of the workings and classes and the legals and the political equality and showed by the exponented of the liberalism and has been the achieved and with the tremendous and the economically and inequalities and the consequences of the injustice yearly composition of the liberalism and had the hope and that the eliminations of the government and restrictions on the business and the industries and put the users and the eras and of the universal improvement in the material conditions and of the life and but the actuals and the experience and show that the breed led and the capitalism and had the produced and socially and the disastrous and the consequences and the tremendous and the increase of the wealth and was the concern and by other small section and which happened to the upon the means of the productions and while the large and the majority of the industries and populations and was the forced and to other sub and the human living and the successful and bankers and the market speculators and increased and there the wealth and by the leaps and abounded while the slums and dwellings and working classes and where the livings and under the consents and threat of the insecurities and the malnutrition of discomfort and the diseases and the death and thus the development and believed and all the humanitarianism and hope of the universal economically progress the first response and to thus the horribles and the condition and came in the forms of and the early and the socialist and movement and which the opposed and the policy of the free and market and the competitions and the draw and the attention and to the deteriorating and the conditions of the working class and can early the socialist and like the Saint and Simon in 1716 and 1825 and the Louis L. Blance in 1811 and 1882 and in the France and the advocated and the more or less the centralized and the economic under the state controls and some the others so to the project and images and of the models and the community and the government and by the principles and of the free corporation and instead of the free and the competitions and as the advanced and by the capitalist system and Robert the Ovens in 1771 and 1858 and in the England and the Charles and Frontiers 40 years and 1772 and 1837 in the France and the Protest and elaborated and the plans of the setting up on the such models and the communities PJ and the Prodons and the 1809 and 1865 and in the France and Hobbed and to set up either nations and wide the systems of the centralized and the workers and the corporations cooperatives and the which and the wood the virgins and with one and the other and others and for the mutuals exchanges of the goods and the services and all thus the thinkers and now the clearly and what was the wrongs and with the world and but they were not and the clear as to the what and to do about and it for they the suggested and only the visionaries and the solutions for the removed and the from the hard realities and of life and in others the words and they had the arrived and it either correct and the diagnosis and of the ill of the capitalist and system and but had no and the clears and the conceptions and of the remedies and they are the therefore rightly and the described and as the utopians and the socialist during the decades and the beginnings and with the 1830 से लेकर के 1840 and the ideas of the utopians and the socialist and were the subjected and to the saviors and the criticism and why other groups and of the brilliant and writer and committed and to the fundamental socials and changes and the notability and why the Karl Marx other German scholars and the Frederick Engels the young German a young German businessman and the residing and in the England and Marx and the Engels and sought to the replace and the utopians and the socialist, and why the scientific socialism and for the analysis of the social problems and the funding there the solution and the solutions and comes and in the forms of and the elaborates and the philosophies and which is now and the recognized and as the Marxism and Marx and the Engels and communist and the manifestos in 1848 and came out and with and the interpretations and of the roles and of the workings and class in the makings of the of past and the futures and history, and it also and gave other Calorians and the coal to the workers and of all the countries and to the unites and for the purposes of the securing and their own and the emancipations and the throats and their the emancipations and the freedoms of all mankind's others the leadings and works and on this the themes and including the Marx the contributions and to the critics of the political economic in 1859 and capitals and volumes 1 in 1861 and the 1879 volumes to 1885 sorry volume 3 1894 volume 2nd and 3rd and the edited by the angels and anti the durings anti the hearings and the 1877 to 1878. In short, Marxism may be the defined as the other side of the political and the economic. In short, Marxism and may be the defined and as other set of the politics and the economically principles and founded by the Karl Marx and the Friedrich and the Eagles in orders to the lay and the scientific foundations and of the socialism. It is the sixth to the understand and the problems of the human society and the through. No. हम कल के डुडुपी के चोजा मेरी अकल Origin and the tenet of the Marxism as other scientific science system and of the thought and are the identified as other classicals and the Marxist and it and the chief and the exponented and include apart and from the Marx and the Engels and the themselves and six and Lenin the 1817 and 1924 other Russia revolutionaries other thinkers and Rose the Luxembourg and the 1871 and 1919 other Polish activities and the Mayo and Zedong in the 1893 and 1976 are the Chinese and the voluntary and the thinkers and the widers and the implications of the Marxism and the including the humanist and the thoughts of the young and the Marx and are the boundly and the identified other neo-Marxism in the nutshell and classicals and the Marxism hold that the private and the property and the divided society into the dominants and the dependent and classes and with the area in the levels and classes and the interested and it is the holden together only and by the ideology and the powers of the dominant class and humans the history and moves the towards and it is the goals and of the human freedoms and through the revolutionaries and the description of the inherents and the contradictions and in the society and the culminating and in the emergence and of other classes and the societies and the new and the Marxism and on the other hand the six and to the analysis and the subtle and the aspected of the phenomena of the dominances and the dependencies of the distortions and in the contemporary and the civilization and the positions and ways to the human and the emancipations and the young Marx कार्ल मार्क्स 1818 से लेकर के 1883 and 8 the authors and of his and the early and the work and this the remains and the unpublished and during and his lifetimes and it was the discovered and from the archives and of the German and the social and the Democrats and that is 1927 and later published as the economic and the philosophics and the manuscript of the 1844 and it is the distinguished and from the Marx and letters the work and which is the characterized and by the scientifics and the regards and Marx and early the work and the contain his the humanist and the thought on the communists and focus on the concept of the alienations and the freedom it is the exposes and the dehumanizing and the effects of the capitalism. Main tenets and of the classical Marxism includes the dialecticals and the materialism and historical materialism doctrine of the class conflict and the theory of the surplus value and the dialecticals and the material the Marx and the borrowed and his the dialectical method and from the German and the philosophers and the GWF and the Hegels जहीं पे बैठ जाओ ना ये तो ऐसे नहीं जहीं पे बैठ जाओ ऐसे जाइए ले लो जाओ dialectical materialism Marx and the borrow and his the dialecticals and the method and from the German philosophers and GWF and the Hegel 1770 1831 and the Suegatos and the combine and it is with its the his and the materialism and Hegel has the postulated and that the idea or the consciousness and was the essence and of the universe and that all the socials and the institutions and were the manifestations and of the changing and the form of data and idea the involve into the new and the forms and because of its the inherent and tension and exemplified and in the clash and between thus the partials and the truth and the antithesis and the opposites and all the theses and again other partials and the truth and resulting in the system synthesis and which is the nearer than the truth. As long as the synthesis in itself and contain the particles and the truth, it takes and the role of thesis and the undergoes and the same process and until his the process and reach absolutes and truth the exemplified and in the observes and ideas or the absolute and consequences and makes believed that matters and not the ideas and was the essence of the universe and that the socials and the institutions and where the manifestations of the changing the material and the conditions and matters under want and the dialecticals and the process and because of its the enhance and tension and until the process and material and condition and the exemplified and by other rationals and the mode of the productions and come into the existence eagle enhance the anti and the deherings and 1878 postulates and theory the laws of the material and the dialectics and or the dialecticals and the materials and the transformation of the qualities into the quality and the voice versas and the interactions interpenetrations and of the opposite and the negations and of the negatives and thus the practical principles and the signifies and the process of the resolving the contradictions and of the material and the conditions and of the human life and which the paves and the ways for the social progress and class and the conflict is also the manifestations of this the process historical materialism and while the dialecticals and the materialism and representation the philosophical and basis of the Marxism and historicals and the materialism and represented it's the scientifics and basis it's the implied and that it any the givens and epoch and the economically and the relations of the society and the means and their why and where why and the men and the women and undertake the productions and of the distributions and the exchange of the material goods and for the satisfactions of theirs the need play an important role in the shapings and there the social and politicals and the intellectuals and ethical relationships in the a perfect societies and will the secures and all the necessaries and of the life and to the satisfactions of all its the members and but it would be the achieved and thorough the long drawn process and the initialities and the internationals and the strategics and strain in the materials and the condition and user in many the imperfections and forth forms and of the society and the according to the Marxist and the perspective and the structures the structure of the society may be the understood in the terms of its the base and the fundamentals foundation and the superstructurals and the external build up and base the consist of the made mode of the productions and the while superstructures is the representation and why its legals and the politicals and structure and religions moral social and practices and literatures arts and the culture etc mode of the productions and has to the component and force of the production and the relations of the production and force of the productions cannot remains static they have and the inherent and the tendency of the development in the column in the directions of the achieving the perfect society and force of the productions has to the component and means of the productions and tools and the equipments and the labors powers and human knowledge skills and means and the power and consultancy and endeavors and to the device and better way of the productions and improvement in the means of the production is the manifested and in the development of the technology and this is the match and why the development of the human knowledge and skills is the required and to the operated and the new and the technology and hence there is other corresponding development of labor power on the other hand relations of the production in any the givens and the epoch are determined and by the patterns and of the ownerships of the means of the social and the production and this the gives rise to the is the two and the contendings and the classes and haves and the have not and in the early years and the stages of the historical development of the forces of the production and fails to the make and any the dent in these patterns and in the others and words and changes in the mode of the production and bringing about changes in the natures of in the nature of the contendings and classes, and it is itself and the brought and the about and by other social and the revolutions, and when the materials and productive forces of the society and come in the conflict and with the exciting relations and of the production, and thus the relations and turn into, and there's the fatals and the new and the social class and wood which and the comes to the ovens and knew the means of the productions and fees the constrained and by thus the failures and the overflow, and the old and the dominant and class in other resolutions revolution as a the result of the social and the revolutions, and the old social information is the replaced by other new and the social formations, and in this the process and old the contending classes are the replaced and by new and the contending classes, and but the classes and the conflict and the continues and on other new and the plans, and this has been and the case until the rise of the capitalism, and which will be the overthrown and by other socialism and the revolutions, and leading to the eventual and emergence of the classes and society. Marxian and views of the stage of the historical development. Ancient time 1. Historical epoch and the prevalence and mode of the productions and uses by the social formation and the contending classes. And the ancient time, the household and the based small scale production and the emergency of the private property and the slaves and owning the societies and the mastered and slaves, the medieval times, and large scale and the agriculture based production and rise of the federalism and the feudals and the society and lord and the self. Modern times and large scale the mechanism and based the productions and the rise of the capitalism and the socialism, and the capitalist society and socialism society revolution and capitalist and worker and work in the powers and the formers and the futures too, and the liquidations of the remunerated and of the capitalism and the communist society, and no containing and society and the classes is it will be the classless and the society. Social formation in the Marxist and the throughout a the form and of the organization of the society, and which comes in into the existence around other specific mode of the productions and changes in mode of the productions, and gives rise to the different and socials and the formation, and which are the associated and with the different and the historical epoch. Thus, household and based the small scale production and gives rise to the slaves and the ownings and the society, and large scale and the agriculture based production gives rise to the feudal society, and the large scale machine and based the production gives rise to the capitalism society, and doctrine of the class conflict of the class and the struggles, and is and the integrals and part of the historical and materialism, and the openings and sentence of the communist and the manifesto 1848, and the reads the history of all the hetero and society is the history of the class struggles, and here's the history and means all the written and the history, and when the communist and the manifestos and was the originally and the written the prehistory giving the account of the primitives and the tribal communities, and with the common ownerships of means of the production, and was not the now, and when it the becomes and the now, and it was the described as the primitive and the communism and the communist and the manifestos deal and with the period and beginnings and with the divisions and of the society and into the antagonistics and classes, and since the emergence of the private properties, and so the communist and the manifestos proceed, and the freemen and the slaves, patricians and the plebeian, and lord and the self and guide, guild master and the journeyman, and in other words and the operations and oppressed and stood in the consultant and the oppositions and to one others, and others carried on, and the unity and now the hidden and now and often the fights and either fight, and that each times and ended the either in other revolutionaries and the reconstruction of the society at the large or in the commons and ruin of the contending classes. Primitive communism. a form of the communism and the classless society with the common and the ownerships of the means of the productions and forms in the primitives and the societies, and in all this it this the stage and the instrumented of the labors and where the most of the primitive kinds and the clubs and the stones and axes, the flint and knife and the stone tips tipped and the spears and followed later. Letters by the bow and the arrows and men and the musculars and the strength and was the only and the motive and force the employed and to the operated, and thus the elementary and the tools and where's the hold in the common ownerships and by the members and of the primitives and the community, and which the engaged and the itself in common labors and the commons and the huntings and common the fishings, and the fruit of this the commons and the labor and were also the shared and in the commons, and there was no the concept of the primitive privates and the property, and hence no the exploitations of the men by men. With the development of the force and of the productions, and one mode of the productions and is the replaced and by the anothers, and but class and conflict and between the new and the class social classes and the appearances and under the new and the social formations, and thus unsigned and the slaves and openings society was the characteristic and was the class conflict and between the master and the slave and medieval feudal society. Force of the production helps to the component and means of the production, tools of the equipment and the labor powers and the human knowledge and the skill men and the women's and the consultancy and the individuals and the device and better way of the production and improvement and the means of the production and manufactured and the development of the technology, and this is the match by the development of the human knowledge and skills is the required and to the operated and to the new technologies, and hence there is other correspondence and development of labor power. On the other hand, relations of the production in any the givens and the epoch and are the determined and by the patterns of the ownerships of the men's and of the social production, and this the gives and rise to the two contendings and the classes and haves and the haves nots, and in the earlier and the stages of the historical development and the development of the forces of the production and fails to the make and any the dent and in the this patterns and in the others and the words and changes in the mode of the production and brings the abouts and changes in the nature of the contendings and classes, and but they do not and the bringing about an end of the class and the conflict and changes in the natures and of the contendings and the classes is itself and the brought about by other social resolutions, and when the material productives and the forces of the society and come in the conflict and with the exciting and the relations and of the production, and thus the relations and the turns into their the theaters and the new and the socials and the classes, and which the comes and to the avance new and the means of the productions and feels the constrained and by the thus and the fetters and the over our the through and the old and the dominated and class, and in the revolutions and as other resulted of the social revolutions and the old socials and the formations and is the replaced and by other new and the social formation, in this the process old the contendings and the classes are the replaced and by the new and the contendings and the classes, and but class the conflict and continue on other new plans, and this has been and the case until the rise of the capitalism, and which will be the overthrown and by other socialism and the revolution leading unto the eventuals and the emergence of the classless society. Marxism view of the stage of the historical development and unsigned time. by class and conflict and between the lord and the serf and the modern capitalism society, and by class conflict between the bourgeois and the capitalism and the proletarianism and the workers, and the status of the class conflict in modern the capitalism and society is derived and in the communist and the manifestos as the unders, the moderns and the bourgeois and the society, and that as the sport and from the ruins and of the fusels and society has not done and away and with the class and the antonogus, and it has but and the established and knew the classes and knew the continuation of the operations and knew the forms of the struggles in the places in the of the old and the ones. Lord and the serf, and there were and the two and the contending and the classes in the medieval feudals and society, and lord the means the landlord and who was the owners and of the land, and the self and the meant and the peasant and who did not and own the land and but the cultivated and it and the received a small and fixed the shares of the produced and as a the returns and for his the tolls and the sheriff, and was not a the slaves, and he the could have is the families and it is the belongings, and but he the could not and the leaves and his the duty and the without the permission of his the lord, and the exploitations and of the serf and was very the common in feudals bourgeoisie and the proletarians, and there are the two and the contending in the classes in the modern capitalist and the society, and the angels and notes and to the notes to the English and the edition of the Communist and the Manifesto on the 1888 and reads and by the bourgeois and is the meant by the class of the moderns and the capitalists and owners of the means and of the social and the productions and the employers of wave and the laborers, and by the proletariat and the class of the moderns and wage and the laborers, and who the havings know the means and of the productions of theirs the one and are produced and to the selling their the labor power in order to class conflict in the modern and capitalism and the society, and has the appeared and in the more and the crystallized and forms, and so the communist and the manifesto declare and our the epoch and of the virtues and the poses and however, and this the distinctives and features it has the simplified and the class and the antagonism and the society as other whole is more and the sweepings and up into the two and the great and the hostiles and campas and into two the great classes and the directly and facing each others, and bourgeoisie and the proletariat and the marks and the angels, and hope and that this the conflict and had the entered and the decisive phase, and they have full and the faith in the revolutionaries and the potentials of the proletariat, and there's the ability and to the overthrow and the capitalism and the established other socialism society, and with the socials and the ownerships of the mean of the social and production, and so they the observed of all the classes, and that the stand and face to the face and with the bourgeois, and today the proletariat alone and is either really and the revolutionaries class the others classes and delay and the finally disappears, and in other phase of the modern industry the proletariat is it's the specials and the essential productions. The proletariat and the resolutions and the would be the different and from all the previous and the previous and the revolutions and of the history, and all the previous and the historicals and the movement, and where the movement of the minorities and or in the interest of the minorities the proletariats, and the movement is the self and the conscience and independence, and the movement of the immense and the majority in the interest of the immense and the majority, and according to the Marx and the angels, and these revolutions and the good beings and about the finance and the emancipations and of the marks of mankind, and because and there is no the class and below the proletariat, and which the could be the subjected and to the exploitations, and when the proletarians and comes to the powers, and it would and face all the means of the social productions and under the social ownerships, and makes the work and compulsory and for the everyone, and the developed and the focus of the production, and to there's the full potentials, and this will pay. the ways and for the emergencies and of the classes less and the society, and which will be the marks and the end of the class conflict. Theory of the surplus value. Theory of the surplus value is a represented economic basis of the Marxism and the criticism and of the capitalist. It is the meant and to the demonstrated and how the capitalism and mode of the production and the involve the exploitations of the working classes, and according to the Marx and labors is the soul in creation of the value of the force and elements of the productions, and views the land, labors and capitals and the organizations. Three elements: land, capitals, organizations are the steroid and the because, and they are the capables of the reproducing and only and the what is the put in thus the labors, and in the only and the element in which the produced and value in the society, and in other the words and the value of the communities in the products and of the labors, and the quantity and of the labors and the employees in it, and the should be the calculated and right from the productions and of the raw materials and proceedings the raw materials acquiring the sources of the energies, and for its the processing and the constructing and the required and machineries and the buildings, and for its the productions and the quantity and of the labor and the required and in its the production, and is also the determined and by the averages and the condition of the social production and the averages skills and of the labors and employees. The actual account of the labor employees in the production of the community is scaled, and it is the natural enterprises, and it is differs from it is the price in the market or the market price, and which the fluctuated and which the with the and changing and the condition of the demand and the supply, and in other free and market society and fostered and by the capitalism, and the workers is forced and to sell his the labors and aid the market price, and when more and the more job seekers and comes to the market and places and the marketplaces, and price of theirs the labors and there's the wages and rate and the declines, and there's the employers and the capitalists and the explorers, and they're the full potentials and to works, and but the pays and that them only the subsistences of the wages, and for there's the ovens and there the families substances. Thus, the values and the produced and by the workers and may be the split into the two parts, and one part is the paid and to the workers and towards and is the wages. The other part is the pocketed and by the capitalism and as is the profits, and this the second part is the described and by the Marx as the surplus values, and recent and the interested are paid from the surplus value. In others, the word and the surplus value and denotes and the value of the labor and done by the workers for which he is not the paid, and it all in it forms part of the capitalism and the profit and rent and the interested on the steroid and the element of the production organizations land and the capital. It is therefore and the glorying and the example of the worker and exploitation under the capitalism new Marxism. Thank you guys. This session will be closed.